everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Metsomania Podcast. I am Clayton Caldwell. Wow, what a win for the New York Mets today. It was a win that at times didn't feel like was going to happen today, but it ended up happening. Luis Robert Jr. with the big blast, a 3-run homer in 11 innings, and he was able to get the Mets the victory today at Citi Field. We'll talk about it all. David Peterson had an interesting day. Juan Soto had an interesting day. Francisco Lindor was 0 for 5. He had an interesting day. But overall, it was I think a solid victory for the Mets. You don't give wins back. That is something I've learned here. You don't give them back. So you take them as they are. The Mets are now 2-0, and they look pretty good in spots. So we'll talk about it all. There's some concerning things, but there's other things that I think ended up being very, very good for this club. Let's start with David Peterson's day. I thought Peterson pitched very well. I think the signature moment for him today was back in the 4th inning when Bo Bichette, who, by the way, seems to have a little bit of a throwing problem with the way he's throwing the ball at third base. It seems like it's tailing towards the right field line when he throws it, and all of a sudden, it's a problem. But today he had an error, and Brian Reynolds reached on it. Then Peterson walked Marcell Ozuna. So this was the first 2 batters of the 4th inning. They had 2 on, nobody out. He struck out Nick Gonzalez swinging on a beautiful, beautiful slider right down the middle of the plate that got Nick Gonzalez. And then Brandon Lau, who looked like a completely different hitter against the lefty Peterson today. He looked completely different than he did on Thursday. He hit a weak ground ball to Marcus Semien at second. The runners moved to second and third, and then Nick York hit a ground ball as well as Semien to end the inning. That was a big, big 4th inning by David Peterson. The Mets offense still didn't do a whole lot, but Bichette had a hit in that 4th inning, but really they didn't do a lot. And Peterson found himself in trouble again in the top of the 5th. He had 2 on with 2 outs, and then he loaded the bases, actually, giving up back-to-back singles to Jared Triolo and Ryan O'Hearn. Brian Reynolds then walked, so the bases were loaded with Marcell Ozuna at the plate, and he got Ozuna to pop up to Jorge Polanco on the infield, which was a relief. It was a 2-0 pitch, so Peterson was battling there, a 2-0 pitch, and he got Ozuna to pop up. Just a huge, huge play, I think. Huge batter in that game, so great job by Peterson to get out of that. Then the Mets went down meekly in the 5th, and then it was the 6th inning. And this is where, you kind of sit there and go, Mendy's first real decision on the year. Did Mendoza get it right? And so Nick Gonzalez hit what was ruled a single to Jorge Polanco. I'm going to be honest, it's a ridiculous scoring decision. It was an error. A bouncing ball, and I'm sorry, I had to take SNY to town a little bit. They were sitting there making excuses for Jorge Polanco. Oh, that's a tough ground ball. Oh, that was Keith was like, that ball was ripped. That was a medium to average ground ball to the exit velocity was 99.3 miles an hour. It bounced twice to get to Polanco. Let's not sit there and talk about it like it was like this screaming line drive. It was not. And, he's got to make that play. Any other first baseman makes that play. So that, to me, wasn't a big deal. And then a weak fly ball that dropped in by Nick York after Brandon Lau popped up to second. So he had 2 on and 1 out in the 6th, about 70-something pitches, and Mendoza went and got him. And I wasn't so sure about that, to be honest with you. I kind of sat there and said, I don't know if that was something I wanted to do, if that was something I wanted to really see as far as this manager going out and getting David Peterson. I would have kind of left him in there, but he made the right call because he got Joey. They brought in Huascar Brazoban. Brazoban 1-2-3 got Joey Bart. Made Joey Bart look silly. Looked great on that, and then he got Jake Mangum, who is a pesky little hitter. Somebody who used to be in the Mets system. Pesky little hitter. First pitch he threw to him, which was a changeup, and Mangum, hit it right back to Jorge Polanco to end the threat. and the inning was over. So we went to the sixth, still no score. Manga made a beautiful play on a Francisco line drive, a hard line drive, Francisco Lindor hard line drive. But really, the next interesting decision that I thought Mendy made was going to the seventh inning. Huascar Brazoban threw 4 pitches. This is the guy who's supposed to give the Mets length. He threw 4 pitches in that sixth inning, and Mendoza pulled him out of the game. Now, I get there's tomorrow. You got to worry about tomorrow as well when you manage these guys, but I did not like that decision. I would have gone with Brazoban at least another inning and keep Weaver and other guys for later in the game, especially when the game's tied at 0. It looked like this game was going nowhere. Brazoban looked excellent. He looked excellent in those 2 batters. Luke Weaver came in, did the job. He got Triola to fly to right. O'Hearn ground out. He got a single to Brian Reynolds, but then got Ozuna to fly out to right field. But so it wasn't a bad inning by Weaver at all. But it was, to me, puzzling that he decided to pull Brazoban. And now Brazoban's available for tomorrow, which we'll get to. We'll look at the bullpen, maybe talk about who might be available, who isn't available after this 11-inning game tomorrow. Do the Mets need to make a roster move? That is something that I think we have to have a discussion about. But overall, a good job by the bullpen there so far. Bottom of the 7th, Mets really don't do a whole lot. Again, Polanco walked, and he seems to walk all the time. He always has a good at-bat. Robert walks, so it was 2 on, nobody out. Beatty went down on strikes. Marcus Semien went down on strikes. Then he brought up Gregory Soto. They brought in Gregory Soto. So there's 2 on and 2 out. Bottom of the 7th, no score in this game. 2 on, 2 out. And Gregory Soto, who we saw last year with the Mets, who's very vulnerable against right-handed hitters, came up to pitch against Carson Bench. My first guess here was go with Mark Vientos. Vientos, we haven't seen him all year. He's on this team as a bench player. We haven't seen him all year. And I was like, listen, I want to see Vientos hit for Bench. To me, the only avenue that Vientos has in these games that he doesn't start to see an at-bat is for Carson Bench. You're not hitting for anybody else in this lineup. And Bench against a tough righty in an RBI spot, against a tough lefty in an RBI spot, in the bottom of the 7th inning, I would have hit Mark Vientos there 100 times out of 100. And I can't believe he didn't do that. Now, he saved them for later on in the game, and we'll get to that, obviously, in a little bit. But to me, that would have been Vientos, the spot to use Vientos against Soto. And Benj went down meekly, struck out, and that retired aside. Now, I'm not trying to sit there and sit there and tell you that what happened with Carson Bench there was, makes me lose belief in Carson Bench. It doesn't. It's a very difficult situation to have a guy in his second game against a very difficult pitcher who's difficult against lefties in a no score game, in a tie game against Soto. I just don't understand Mendy's thinking there. So he doesn't go Vientos. And what you could have done was put Vientos there, hit for Benj, and then you put Tyrone Taylor in right field. And Taylor would get the at-bat later on in the game, which we'll get to. But that's what I would have done, is put Tyrone Taylor in right field, and I would have hit for Bench. That's what I would have done there. I was kind of surprised Mendoza didn't do that. That was a first guess, by the way. I have the text chat to prove it. If you'd like to see it, that was a first guess. I couldn't believe he did not go Vientos there. So then Brooks Raley came in the top of the 8th inning. I don't know what to even tell you about Brooks Raley. Brooks Raley he's great. He looked like the best reliever out there. This guy is so good. He got Gonzalez to pop up. Then Brandon Lowe looked like a completely different hitter. Struck him out on 3 pitches. A beautiful slider that Lowe had no chance on. And then he got Nick York called out on strikes too on a sweeper at the knees. Strike 3. Good night. And York went down. And I mean, I love watching this guy pitch. I mean, he's my favorite reliever. I love Brooks Raley. He's making $4 million this year. Incredible bargain there. And he was phenomenal on top of the 8th inning. Phenomenal. So here we are, going to the bottom of the 8th inning, no score, and the Mets coming to bat. It's Francisco Alvarez who walks. They used Taylor here as a pinch runner, which I liked. Obviously, if you didn't use Vientos to hit for Benj, Taylor's there, And as soon as he walked, I said, you got to get the extra speed. And Lindor got called out on strikes, his first real bad at bat of the game. Took a fastball up in the zone that was a strike and decided, against the righty, batting right-handed, I should say, against Soto. Then Soto threw a wild pitch in that at bat as well, where Taylor went to second. And then Soto hit a weak grounder, but moved the runner over to third. And then Bo Bichette struck out swinging on a pitch way in the dirt on Soto. He looked like he didn't have a prayer there. So after 8 innings, there was still no score. Mets put Torrens behind the plate. Taylor was out of the game. And so Devin Williams came in to face Brooks Raley. Williams got O'Neal Cruz swinging. Jake Mangum, guy's a pain in the neck, hit a double down the left field line. And then it was Jared Triolo grounded out to Semien. So there was one on third. And then O'Hearn walked. And then they got Brian Reynolds strike out swinging. That was a beautiful pitch in the 9th inning. And here come the Mets with another chance to try and win this game in the 9th inning. Jorge Polanco, another walk. There's one more walk that he has in this game, but another walk. Luis Robert Jr. in his last at bat before the homer, grounded to first. Polanco moved to second. And then Beatty hit into a line drive, hard line drive. That ball off the bat for Peoples keeping score at home was a 90.8 line drive to the first baseman, Ryan O'Hearn, who leaped at it. Really, it was the apex of his leap. He caught that ball with a beautiful play. And Polanco was off of second base, was going because he thought it was going to go to the outfield and there was going to be a play at the plate. But O'Hearn made a great play, caught the line drive, threw to second. That ended the 9 frames, and the Mets would move to the 10th inning. Luis Garcia came in with Brian Reynolds being the ghost runner in the 10th. Ozuna popped up, and then it was Nick Gonzalez getting the first run of the game. The Mets fell behind here in the 10th inning, and Brian Reynolds scored. Brandon Lowe against the righty looks like a completely different hitter. He hit a single, and so it was first and second. Then Nick York hit a fly ball to center. Henry Davis walked. The bases were loaded, and then Mangum grounded into a force play. Bottom of the 10th inning, Hunter Barco came in to pitch for Pittsburgh. And he hit Semien with a pitch. Beatty was a ghost runner. Semien got hit on the back leg on a breaking ball. And then this is where he uses Mark Vientos. So I would have used Vientos, what was that, in the 7th inning in the game? I would have used Vientos in the 7th against Soto. I would have taken Benj out of the game. Instead, he kept Benj in for another 2 innings. And then in the 10th inning, in extra innings, here comes Mark Vientos with runners on first and second and nobody out against lefty Hunter Barco. And Vientos hits a hard ground ball through the hole just past the shortstop at 99 miles an hour and into left field. And the bases were loaded with nobody out. Luis Torrens now catching, and he was hitting for Francisco Alvarez. Alvarez got lifted for a pinch runner. In my scenario, he would have hit here. And that would have been Tyrone Taylor taking that at bat for Vientos. But obviously, we might not be here if Vientos got that hit in my scenario. So anyway, but it's Luis Torrens, beautiful single. Bases, they played, station to station there. Bases were loaded. And then he hit a ground ball by Lindor, and they threw the runner out at home. So that was 1 out. And I didn't love that at-bat by Lindor, right? So here's where the at-bats were bad by the Mets. And this is where I wanted to get to here in the bottom of the 10th inning. 1-1 game, the bases were loaded. Okay, Lindor, who had a tough game today. I gave him a lot of credit on Thursday, opening day with the 3 walks. He looked great. Today, I didn't think he looked that good at the plate. He had a couple of hard hit balls, but not great. A 47-mile-an-hour ground ball to the second baseman, Brandon Lowe. And, it was a 1-0 count. And he took it and took a pitch that was kind of out of the zone and hit it to the right side. They threw it home and got Semien out at home. Mets challenged. He was out. And he was out. And so now there's 1 out. Bases are still loaded because Lindor went to first. Bases are still loaded. And Juan Soto came to the plate. And so this is where, if you're the Mets, right, You have your 1-2 hitters up with the bases loaded. Lindor hits a weak grounder, and I'm sorry, Juan Soto, who he's a great player. He's hard to critique because he's such a good player. But this is Hunter Barco. He throws the first pitch. It wasn't even close to sinker that he swung at. It was probably 3 feet inside, almost hit him. And Soto, who's got such great plate discipline, swings at that. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was as bad of an at-bat by Juan Soto as I've ever seen him have in a Met uniform. And let me tell you, he didn't have a great year last year, especially early on. It was that bad. That bad of an at-bat by Soto. Terrible at-bat. Terrible. The worst at-bat of the game came from Soto there. A pitch, if it was a good pitch, I would say, hey, you know what? It's baseball. It happens. This guy's a great hitter. Okay. That was a horrendous at-bat. Horrendous. Swinging at the first pitch. Wasn't even close. And he did Barco a huge favor. Grounded back to the pitcher who threw it to the catcher. This time the Mets didn't even challenge. Young was out by a mile at home. And there was 2 outs. And then it was Bo Bichette. Hit a fly ball to right field. Game time stays at 1-1. It was a very frustrating bottom of the 10th inning for the Mets. A very frustrating bottom of the 10th inning. So now the Mets in here, because of how they used their bench, Jared Young remained in the game as the right fielder. So Young stays in the game. He's played some left, he's played some right, but he's not, Roberto Clemente out there. And in a tight game, it's a little hairy to have him out there. And they also used pretty much their entire bullpen, right? They used Brazelbon for 2 batters in the 6th to get out of the 6th, Weaver in the 7th, Raley in the 8th, Williams in the 9th, and then Luis Garcia in the 10th. So who do you go with? There's 2 relievers left if you don't include Tobias Myers. Now, Myers threw 3 innings on Thursday, on opening day. Peralta went 5, and then Myers went for 3. And so you would think he's unavailable today. I would say definitely unavailable today. I think he's unavailable the rest of the series against Pittsburgh. So you have Sean Manaea, who is the guy that provides some length in this bullpen that's left, or Richard Lovelady. Now, we know what Lovelady did last year. He was not great in situations last year. He's a 4A pitcher. He's the last reliever on the bench, in a bullpen. The last reliever you want to use, Richard Lovelady. But the Mets go to him here instead of Manaea. I would have went Manaea, and I know the problem you're putting yourself into there is you have no length for McLean if McLean gets lit up tomorrow. You have no length on Monday if Clay Holmes doesn't go deep into the game. And then maybe, unless you think Myers is available on Monday, and then Tuesday if Kodai Senga going, and you kind of like to have Manaea here somewhere in this, in those 3 games. You like to have him available in case somebody doesn't go deep into the game. I get that. But if I had to choose Richard Lovelady or Sean Manaea, even though Sean Manaea's velocity was down, I would go Sean Manaea. But Mendoza makes an interesting call and goes Richard Lovelady. And I got to give Richard Lovelady credit. It wasn't a flawless inning, but ghost runner on second base. Triola hit a fly ball to center field. Then O'Hearn grounded out to second baseman Marcus Semien. So there's 2 outs. Runner on third. Brian Reynolds hit a single, a ground ball to third baseman Bo Bichette, and Mangum scores, and then Ozuna hit a single. And at that point, I'm just sitting there thinking, get out of this game 2-1. Let's get out of this inning 2-1. If we get out of this inning 2-1, I'm thrilled. And he got Nick Gonzalez to swing at a sweeper down in the zone for strike 3 with 2 on. That was a huge strikeout by Lovelady. Give him credit for a guy that is not really a high leverage reliever. That was a big inning to get out of. It was. You can't expect him to be flawless. You hold your breath every time he pitches, and he got out of it. So he did a good job there in the top of the 11th inning. The Mets then had Bo Bichette as the ghost runner. Jorge Polanco did a tremendous job, had a 6-pitch at-bat against Barco. 3-2, took a sinker way outside for ball 4. Mets had first and second, nobody out. And that is when Luis Robert hit a home run on a 1-0 pitch, a 1-0 slider down in the zone. But as soon as he hit it, you knew, hey, that's got a chance. It got up over the wall in left field, bounced off the Great Wall of Flushing and into the stands. And the Met fans went home happy, and the Mets went home happy. A great win. Luis Robert Jr., his statement so far as a Mets player, as Mets center fielder. The Mets win a game trailing after the 8th inning for the first time since 2024. Hard to believe. 2 games into the year, they already done that. And listen, it wasn't a pretty game today. Pittsburgh had 12 hits. They had left a ton of runners on base, but the Mets got it done. And that's baseball. Baseball is such a great game, right? The Mets score 11 runs on opening day. They didn't score for 9 innings today. It's crazy. 11 runs on opening day against the favorite to win the National League Cy Young. Today they face Mitch Keller, who's a nice pitcher, but not the favorite to win the National League Cy Young, and they don't score at all against them. He pitched 6 innings, 3 hits, gave up no earned. Peterson on our side, 5 1/3, 6 hits, no earned. He was fine. But it just shows you how good and how crazy this game of baseball really is. And so I can't tell you how excited that was to watch that game and to come away with a win. It wasn't pretty, but you don't give up W's. You don't return them, right? You don't sit there and go, nah, that's a win, but oh well. You don't do that. The W is a W is a W. And we'll take the W. And now the Mets have a chance tomorrow with Noel McLean, one of probably, I think, one of their best pitchers on this staff, going tomorrow, going for the sweep against a right-hander, Carmen Moldeski. We'll see how he pitches, 27-year-old right-hander for Pittsburgh, and the Mets go for the sweep. But some concerning things, some encouraging things. The concerning thing was Soto and Lindor today at the top of the lineup. So you want to go through the Mets' top of the lineup together. They were 1 for 10 today. No walks, 1 for 10 with a strikeout. The top 3 were 2 for 15 with 3 strikeouts. Not going to get it done. Not going to get it done. So the big guys that you expect to really lead this lineup didn't do that today. But the encouraging things you saw, Polanco, a couple of really good at-bats. Luis Robert Jr., of course, the home run. He had a couple of really good at-bats even before that. And Mark Vientos, who has gotten a lot of heat from Met fans. And rightfully so. He had a tough 2025 season. Did not have a good spring training. And so he's been kind of relegated to the bench, lost his third base job, really lost any significant playing time he had here. And for him to go out against a lefty on a cold day to get that single in the 10th inning to keep the rally going, I thought that was a very, very good at-bat by Vientos. And very encouraging. Very encouraging. Luis Torrens, obviously, that big hit, the drive on a run, was huge. And it takes all 26 to win these games. And the Mets used pretty much everybody today that they could use, other than Minaya and Tobias Myers. So it just shows you what kind of game we got here. But a huge win, a thriller. Some questionable decisions by Mendoza. I didn't love him not using Vientos earlier in that game. To me, that is where Vientos is going to have an avenue to contribute here off the bench against a tough lefty. When Benj, who's a young player, has an opportunity to drive on a run, I would sit there and go, okay, let me go Mark Vientos, the little bit more established player, the guy who hits lefties very well, and let him earn his way back into this team. And with that at bat today, I mean, that was a screamer past the shortstop. With that at bat today, he should probably get consideration for pinch hitting more. That is for sure. So, a huge win by the Metropolitans today. I loved every second of it. Thanks for listening to Metsomania Podcast. Mets go for the sweep tomorrow at Citi Field against the Pirates. Let's go Mets.